Imagine working day and night, fixing every single tech issue, training dozens of employees, keeping an entire company alive only for your boss to smirk and tell you, sorry, you don't get paid for overtime. Well, one IT guy didn't just accept it. He smiled, walked away, and then made his company pay everyone's overtime. If you've ever tasted that sweet moment when the tables turn, when the underdog finally gets justice, then you're going to love this story. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let me know in the comments. Have you ever wanted to get revenge on a boss who treated you unfairly? All right, let's dive in. Let's call our hero, Bob. Bob wasn't just an IT guy. He was the IT guy, the one who could walk into a server room full of tangled wires, cryptic error messages, and panicked employees, and somehow make everything work again. He'd been into computers since he was a kid. While other kids were out playing, Bob was the type who'd take apart an old desktop just to see how the pieces fit together. By the time he was in high school, he was already the person neighbors called when their computers crashed. So it's no surprise that Bob ended up working IT jobs as an adult. Like most people in tech, he hopped between companies, picking up experience and mastering different systems. His most recent employer was a service and distribution company in Ontario, Canada. And that's where our story takes place. About 3 years ago, Bob's company made a massive decision. They wanted to modernize. Up until then, they were juggling a bunch of separate software systems, one for payroll, one for inventory, one for dispatch, another for finances. It was clunky and confusing. Data constantly had to be copied and pasted between programs, and things often slipped through the cracks. So the bosses decided, let's get an ERP system. For those who don't know, ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. It's basically one massive software system that handles everything: purchasing, vendors, inventory, HR, payroll, you name it. Want to know which salesman brought in the most revenue last quarter? ERP can tell you. Want to see which vendor delivers the fastest? ERP can show that too. It's a beast of a system, and it's complicated. Lucky for the company, Bob knew one particular ERP system inside and out. He had worked with it at a previous job, and when his bosses asked him for recommendations, he confidently pointed them toward it. They took his advice, and soon Bob found himself at the center of the biggest project of his career, implementing ERP across the entire company. Now, rolling out ERP software isn't like installing Microsoft Word. It's complex. Every department's sales, accounting, inventory, shipping had their own modules. Bob had to customize the software for each role, train employees, troubleshoot errors, and answer nonstop questions. Bob, how do I print this report? Bob, the system logged me out. Bob, I can't find this customer's order. Day after day, Bob was running ragged, but he pulled it off. Within a few months, the system was live. Employees were trained, things were running smoothly, and Bob was finally able to catch his breath, or so he thought. The company was doing well, and they decided to expand. They started marketing in different time zones: Atlantic Canada in the east, Pacific Canada in the west. Sounds great for business, right? But for Bob, it was a nightmare. Atlantic Canada is an hour and a half ahead, Pacific is 3 hours behind. That meant when Bob showed up at 8 a.m., employees in Atlantic Canada had already been working since 6:30 am firing off emails and requests. And when he tried to leave at 5, employees in Vancouver were just getting started and expected him to help. Suddenly, Bob's workday stretched from dawn until late evening. And here's the kicker. His company expected him to be available the whole time. Management came up with what they thought was a solution. They decided to stagger the IT shifts. One person would start early around 6 a.m. and finish mid. The other would start later around 10:30 a.m. and stay until 7 p.m. In theory, this covered the whole day. In practice, disaster. Bob's IT colleague had kids and flat out refused to work the late shift. Management didn't care. They demanded it anyway. The colleague quit. And just like that, Bob became the only IT employee in the entire company. Bob figured, okay, maybe this is my chance to negotiate. He asked for a raise. Management said no. He asked for overtime pay. Management smugly replied, "You're an IT specialist, exempt from overtime laws." And annoyingly, they were right. Ontario labor law exempts certain IT professionals from overtime. Bob checked. They had him cornered. So now he was doing the work of 2 people, covering early mornings and late nights, training new hires, solving every glitch, and babysitting the ERP system all for the same pay. And it wasn't just the workload. The attitude from management was brutal. If Bob missed a request, they chewed him out. If he didn't answer an evening phone call, they scolded him. No matter how much he gave, it was never enough. Bob started networking with other IT professionals in his area. Over drinks, he vented about his company. When he mentioned the salary they were offering new hires, his friends laughed. It was way below market. There was no chance the company would ever find another IT guy with his skills at that pay. That gave Bob an idea. He realized he was sitting on a gold mine of data, and if management wanted to exploit him, he'd make sure they paid dash, literally .c. ERP software tracks everything. Every time an employee logs in, it creates a record time, date, duration. Even if someone forgot to log out, the system automatically ended their session after 15 minutes. That meant Bob had access to the exact working hours of every single employee in the company. And here's where it gets juicy, according to Ontario labor law. Even salaried employees are entitled to overtime after 44 hours per week unless they're officially managers or supervisors. Bob knew plenty of employees were coming in early and staying late. Their login records proved it, and they hadn't been paid a dime of overtime. So Bob quietly began pulling reports one by one. He went through each employee who wasn't classified as a manager. He ran the data all the way back to when the ERP system was first implemented. The numbers were staggering. Dozens of employees had been working 50, 60 hours a week for years, and none of them had been paid overtime. Next, Bob reached out to an employment lawyer. He asked, "Can I show this data to employees? Can they use it to demand back pay?" The lawyer smiled. "Oh, yes. In fact, if you want, you can refer them directly to me. Bob's plan was set. Bob lined up a new job first because he wasn't stupid. Then, after officially leaving the company, he sent one final email. Attached was an Excel sheet. Every employee had their own tab, showing exactly how many hours they had worked past 44 each week. Going back years, the subject line, "You're legally entitled to overtime pay," in the body of the email. Bob included the employment lawyer's name and contact info, and then he hit send. The reaction was immediate. Employees who had been silently suffering, dragging themselves in early, staying late without recognition, suddenly saw in black and white just how much the company owed them. They were furious. Almost every single one of them authorized the lawyer to negotiate on their behalf. And because the evidence came straight from the company's own ERP system, there was no way to fight it. The company had to pay not just Bob, not just a few employees. They had to cough up a ton of money to nearly their entire workforce, all because they were too greedy to pay one guy fairly. Think about the poetic justice. Here. Bob asked for a raise. Denied. He asked for overtime. Denied. All management had to do was treat him with a shred of fairness. Instead, they squeezed him dry, thinking he had no leverage. But they forgot the golden rule of IT. The guy who runs your systems has the keys to the kingdom. Bob didn't sabotage anything. He didn't hack. He didn't delete. He just pulled the truth out of their own database and handed it to the people they were cheating. And in the end, the company paid for far more than they ever would have if they'd simply done the right thing from the start. Revenge doesn't always mean breaking something or burning bridges. Sometimes it's about exposing the truth and letting justice do the rest. In Bob's case, the sweetest revenge was simply shining a light on what management hoped no one would ever notice. So, what do you think? Was Bob's revenge perfectly justified, or do you think he went too far? Let me know in the comments below. N. Hey, if you've ever dreamed of that one moment where the underdog finally wins, make sure you subscribe for more stories like this. Smash that like button if you enjoyed Bob's epic takedown, and share this with a friend who's stuck with a terrible boss. Because remember, sometimes the quiet IT guy is the most dangerous person in the room.